Hi, I'm Christy Clemens, the Title IX coordinator, and this session is for faculty who have been designated as responsible employees. The team consists of me as the Title IX coordinator and Gary Sund, our Deputy Title IX coordinator for response. When we're not working remotely, our office is located in Parkhurst Hall on the garden level or the basement. During the time that we're all working remotely, we're all still available in our home offices via phone, email, or contacting us through our website. We have been busy. We've been taking and responding to concerns and complaints all throughout the past 6 months. So we have 3 objectives for our session today. The first is to share the role and purpose of Title IX in the office. Secondly is to learn about obligations as a responsible employee. And third is to recognize that we all have a role to play in creating a respectful and inclusive community. So what is Title IX? You may have heard about this before. I'm sure that this slide is familiar to many of you. Title IX is a federal statute overseen by the Department of Education that requires that we are mindful and are not allowing any discrimination based on sex. And so this is it. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. This applies to all members of the Dartmouth community. So though our focus today in the middle part of the session is to talk about your responsibilities as a responsible employee, you are also protected under Title IX if you feel that you're facing discrimination or you're unable to participate in your education program or activity as a faculty member, a learner, or an employee. You can report to our office and we can discuss options. So what does this mean? It means that Dartmouth, specifically me as the Title IX coordinator, has a duty to promptly respond to incidents of sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. Our policy also covers such conduct such as sexual exploitation, the provision of alcohol or other drugs for prohibited conduct. Our policy is more expansive than just the federal Title IX regulations require us to have policies on. And that's because we want to make sure that we're able to respond to all manner of reports that come in about folks who are feeling discriminated or harassed against on the basis of sex. We are committed to establishing and maintaining a safe learning, living, and working environment where the healthy, respectful, and consensual conduct represents the campus cultural norm. Excuse me. So we have a Title IX office for a number of reasons. We are required to have a Title IX coordinator by federal law, but more importantly, because all members of our community should feel safe and secure in their living, learning, and working environment so they can fully participate. We're also here to assure that there's a fair, impartial, prompt, and equitable response to resolve complaints. As I mentioned earlier, our sexual and gender-based misconduct policy encompasses and defines a number of terms of prohibited conduct, as well as discusses the ways that you may resolve these complaints. The final rule issued by the Department of Education that went into effect on August 14th, 2020, is reflected in our new policy, or revised policy, I should say. There's Title IX prohibited conduct, which is what is defined by the federal government. And then there's other, or Dartmouth prohibited conduct, which goes a little bit beyond the requirements of just the Title IX prohibited conduct that we're required to follow by the federal government. Our policy covers, as I mentioned earlier, sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. We also discuss and define sexual exploitation, retaliation, and exertion of power, supervision, or authority in sexual or intimate relationships. In the policy, you'll find Dartmouth's definition of consent, the role of Title IX coordinators, resources, options for resolution, and supportive measures. And I would encourage you to go to our website at sexual-respect.dartmouth.edu to review this policy and the procedures for resolution. My role is to ensure equal access to all education, employment, and other opportunities at Dartmouth, regardless of sex or gender. We receive reports, oversee response and resolution, and implement supportive measures. We also advise individuals about the options for resolution that are available in the college and in the community, and we oversee and provide education and training to all members of the community, such as this one. So talking a little bit more about your obligations as a responsible employee. We'll start by talking about confidential resources. And again, if you've been in a training like this before with me, sometime in the past this was called confidential resources versus private resources. And that language felt a little bit sticky. The term responsible employees is what is used in our policy and used by the Department of Education. And so we've shifted our language to define our campus resources as confidential resources or responsible employees. So to begin, confidential resources are provided that confidentiality by their professional licensure. You can't just wake up one day and say, today I'm going to be a confidential resource. Confidential resources may not share any information that's shared with them without that person's express consent, unless, of course, some exceptions such as an imminent danger to self or others, or otherwise required by law, like sexual abuse of a minor. Confidential resources are a great place for folks to go if they're not sure what path they might want to take to resolution, and they are sure that they don't want anybody else to know at this point. Confidential resources include licensed medical or counseling professionals, staff members of organizations like rape crisis centers, and ordained clergy. For our purposes and on our campus, we have 4 confidential resources. So first is the Dartmouth Counseling and Health Services, otherwise known as Dix House. Contained within Dix House is the Counseling Center, Primary Care and Women's Health, and an inpatient department. All employees of the health services, including administrative staff, are confidential. So they are all protected underneath that confidentiality umbrella. As you know, students utilize these resources. Many of them are available on 24 hours a day by on call. And so these folks are not allowed to share information with anyone unless they have the consent of that person to share. For faculty and employees, we have the Faculty Employee Assistance Program, or FEAP. Hopefully you've heard of this before. There's 2 ways to access the FEAP. One is to call this 844 number, and you'll be connected to this network of professionals that we are connected to through guidance resources. So if you've been at Dartmouth for a little while, you may recall that we used to have just a local program here on campus. That office is down to just one person, Sharon Marisi, who's amazing, but is only one person. And so we've hooked into this broader network called guidance resources that's available 24 hours a day. You can receive up to 8 counseling sessions for free. And this is all completely confidential. It's, again, another black box. No one knows what goes to FEAP, and no one will ever hear from them about what you've shared. The Tucker Center, and specifically the college chaplain, Rabbi Daveen Litwin, is another confidential resource on campus. Daveen is a great person to refer students to if they're not feeling comfortable with counseling, but maybe they just want to talk to somebody and make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. This can be a great first stop for them, and we work closely with Daveen to ensure that she knows what our options are, how we can refer folks, and what options are available to students. And then WISE, WISE of the Upper Valley is a local organization working to end gender-based violence. They employ a number of advocates and programming folks, and we have a campus advocate, Bailey Ray, who specifically works with any members of the Dartmouth population. When things are a little bit more normal, she is on campus 1 day per week, but is available all throughout the week for other appointments. She has been readily available during the work from home time at her email, and she's happy to talk with folks as needed. She's a great resource, I think, for people who are not sure if they might want to go through the criminal system. While I can be an expert on our Dartmouth process, Bailey is an expert in the criminal process and can help folks navigate that. So turning now to responsible employees, which you are a responsible employee, likely, if you're viewing this, this training. So responsible employees are required to promptly share a disclosure of sexual assault, sexual or gender-based harassment, dating or domestic violence or stalking, including all the details known with the Title IX coordinator. This information will only be communicated with other individuals on a need-to-know basis. So I recognize that this is awkward. A student perhaps has chosen to share with you that they weren't able to complete their assignment because they had been sexually assaulted over the weekend and they were distracted. They've chosen to share this information with you, and your response is that you need to tell somebody else that they don't know. I recognize that that's a very hard thing to do, and it puts everyone in an awkward position, but it is a requirement of our policy and of law that you share this information with our office. Pretty much everyone on our campus who is not designated as confidential is considered a responsible employee. So all faculty, staff, and coaches, safety and security, all the deputy Title IX coordinators, et cetera, et cetera. It's called a responsible employee because you have responsibility for somebody, for the other person who may be disclosing to you. So it's defined as employees in a leadership or supervisory position who have significant responsibility for the welfare of students, faculty, or staff. So that's anyone who has the authority to hire, promote, discipline, evaluate, grade, or direct students, faculty, or staff. So sometimes when I'm doing this live, a question that I'll get will be, well, I don't actually have this student in a class, but they're sharing this with me because we had prior conversations and they trust me. They are probably still coming to you because they see you as somebody who has the authority to hire, promote, discipline, evaluate, grade, etc. And so I would say that you would still need to share that information with our office. If a colleague, a peer, came to you and shared something that was going on in their life, you are not obligated to share that information with our office because you don't have any responsibility or any supervision over that person. If you are the department chair and one of your faculty members comes to you to share something, you do have supervisory or authority over that person, so you should disclose to our office. I throw out these examples and I know that humans are complicated, and so those examples are not always the ones that we're going to be dealing with. And so please don't hesitate to reach out and call me, talk through an incident, talk through a disclosure before sharing the name. And then we can decide whether or not it is something that you would need to disclose to our office. So if someone does disclose some of that prohibited conduct to you, you should contact us right away through phone or email or in person. You're required to promptly share, and prompt is not, oh, hold on, student who just disclosed something to me while I pick up the phone. You don't need to do it that immediately. But it would be perhaps after that student leaves your office, perhaps first thing the next morning, that information needs to get to me. A change that has been prompted by some of the changes in federal statute is that a report is any disclosure of prohibited conduct as defined in the SMP, in our policy. That information does not need to come directly from the complainant. So in the past, we used to say that only first-hand disclosures needed to come to the Title IX office. The shift is now, if a student says, I couldn't hand in this paper because I was supporting my friend who was sexually assaulted, and that friend's name is so-and-so, that information needs to come to our office now. So that is a bit of a shift that I want to just pause and highlight. Again, that's not necessarily a choice that Dartmouth has made, but this is what is required by the final rule that went into effect in August. The reason we do this is not to make everybody feel bad and to make people feel like everyone's talking behind their back. It increases the likelihood that a complainant will receive access to supportive measures and make sure that everyone has equitable access to the resolution process. I know it can be really hard for people to consider accessing our offices, but if they hear from you, someone that they've chosen to disclose to, that, hey, I'm required to share this with Title IX and here are the things that they can do for you, that will only increase the likelihood that that person will engage in supportive services. So here's what happens when I receive that disclosure. And I feel like it's important for me to share this with you so that you could explain it to the person who's disclosed to you to help maybe allay some of the concerns they may have. So we will reach out. We'll reach out to the person and say, hey, we understand that you shared with Professor so-and-so that something happened. You don't need to respond to this email. We don't need to meet, but here are a number of options and resources for you should you choose to take advantage of them. So that will be sent within 24 hours of notice to our office. That email contains information about reporting and resolution options, the right to contact law enforcement and seek medical treatment, the importance of preservation of evidence, and confidential resources and responsible employees available on and off campus. As I said, it will let them know that it is voluntary and not obligatory to meet with our office, but just sort of puts it out there and says, here's a bunch of information. If you want to come and talk to us about it, please do. We don't tell people how they should respond. It's a really important value of mine that when someone comes into my office, what I begin with is, how can I help? And because that's really what we're oriented for. I'm here to fulfill my federal obligation to ensure equal access, but also I'm sitting with a person who's had an experience that they are not sure how to deal with yet. So we let them lead the conversation. We'll connect them with the resources that they need, provide them all of the available options, and help them to understand what choices they have to make. Sometimes people will say, well, what will you do? And that's not appropriate for us to say, but what we can share is, here are the options available to you, and we can talk through what each of those might look like. So supportive measures, also a bit of a language shift from where we had been in the past. Supportive measures are available to both complainants and respondents involved in a situation to ensure that they are able to continually access their education or their employment at Dartmouth. So this is a lengthy list. If you've ever received an email from me asking for some academic adjustments for a student, that would fall within this supportive measure list. It's often a choose your own adventure. It depends on what the circumstance is. So if you have someone who's reported that their supervisor is harassing them, a supportive measure might be a reassignment for that employee to report to somebody else or to have their physical workspace in a different location. A student may request that they move within their residence hall. We can facilitate that as a supportive measure. And so this is the bulk of the work that we do. People know our office for formal resolutions or investigations, but truly supportive measures are a lot of what we're doing, working with individuals to ensure that they're able to continually gain access to their education. All right, so that's a lot about your responsibilities. Again, things have not shifted much, but there were some important changes in terms of language that I felt like you needed to know. I can't do this work by myself. I've been in this role beginning my 3rd year now, and I think that we're continually making progress and always learning new ways that we can reach out to our community. It's everybody's responsibility to try to intervene and prevent sexual harassment and violence. Everyone's expected to create a respectful environment free from harassment. These things start at the top. I think we need to model this positive behavior. We need to model intervention and bystander, just a bystander perspective. And if somebody comes to you to ask for help, there's an expectation that you would refer them to our office, that you'd provide them with the information that they need. And it doesn't mean that you need to be an expert in Title IX. It just means that you need to know what your obligations are to report and how to get them to my office. Bystander intervention, again, sometimes you see something and you just don't feel right about it. And it's hard sometimes to motivate yourself to be inserted into that situation. And so we have a very, with our students in the past couple of years, have built a pretty strong bystander intervention culture. And I would hope that that would extend to faculty and staff as well. There are moments of action. You should do something yourself. You can bring others in, create a distraction. You know, if you don't intervene because it doesn't involve you, the professional impact is real. We're all defined by our colleagues and how our colleagues are viewed by outside of Dartmouth and colleagues inside of Dartmouth. And so it does begin with understanding what our policies are, what is prohibited conduct, and what are our paths for resolution. Resolution is a whole other presentation. I'd be happy to come in and talk to folks about that if you'd like, but knowing how to draw the box before you start to enforce that box is really important. All right, and so we have completed our time together. Again, our website, sexual-respect.dartmouth.edu, has all of our contact information, has all of our policies, as well as procedures, and I would invite you to take a look at that at your leisure. So thank you, and I will be joining you shortly after you view this video to answer any questions, so please hang on to them and we'll have some time to talk. Thanks.